Iron Maiden's Peace of Mind was released in 1983 and is considered to be one of Iron Maiden's greatest albums. While Flight of the Icarus was the first single and helped launch this album to great success, especially in America, it was actually The Trooper that would be the track that would have the most staying power out of this album. The Trooper is one of the songs that made me fall in love with Iron Maiden, just this relentless, powerful gallop into war. It was never hailed as a production masterpiece, and it didn't really need to be. The production was fairly raw, same with the mix, and everything was well separated. It got the elicited effect across. So I thought to myself, would I make this more modern? Well, let's see. Let's go find out. Huge thanks to Sweetwater for sponsoring this video. If you're not familiar with Sweetwater, you're either not a musician or you don't live in America or you haven't watched a bazillion YouTube videos. There's a reason why everyone goes to Sweetwater, man. They are the best. Sweetwater was kind enough to provide me with these Focal Shape 65 monitors that are holy moly, fabulous. I was working with these Avitone CLA-10s, which I also purchased from Sweetwater, and I really like them a lot. But because of the nature of how they're designed, they're missing a bunch of low end, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just part of the design. Being in this really awkward room and trying to pretend as though I can mix in this room, it makes it hard to really know what's going on with my low end in general. So these Focals have a different kind of bass design where they have these passive radiators on the side. Long story short, it allows your monitors to be closer to a wall and still get more accurate low end information. Like, thank the Lord. And they also sent me this PreSonus FaderPort 16 that you see sitting right in front of me, which is a MIDI controller to use in your DAW. As you can see, I already use Studio One, so I was like, yes, I'm a big Studio One fan, and I've been using this FaderPort. I am loving. Cleans up my workflow, and plus, I love having the natural ability of using an actual fader instead of trying to do everything with a mouse. It's like, ugh. I'm gonna be saved so much carpal tunnel. So again, huge thanks to Sweetwater, and let's get into the video. All right, so a good place to start, I think, would be just to listen to the original mix and then listen to my new mix. So this is the original here. And then my remix. Again, original. And remix. I think I improved upon it. Let's take a listen to a portion with vocals on it. So this is the original.
Turn it back. The feel the sounds, the charge begins. But on this battlefield,
Then remix.
no one wins. The smell of acrid smoke and horse's breath. As a virgin into
Original.
sudden death.
I think there's an argument to be made that my vocal is a little quieter and maybe a slight bit harder to hear, but I don't know, man. I still think you can hear all of the lyrics well. The question becomes, what did I actually do to this thing? Well, let's take a look at the drums. So we're gonna solo those boys up, and I'm gonna go ahead and bypass that. So we're listening to just the drums. This is before, and then this is after. That kick. The other thing you'll notice is that my remix, since it is exaggerating a bunch of things, is also exaggerating a ton of the artifacting. I'm fairly certain they used some type of isotope plugin to separate all these stems out. These stems have, I mean, you can hear the guitars still baked into those drums. I'm fairly certain they just couldn't cleanly separate it perfectly. So one of the issues with my remix is just the artifacting of the files I was given. Man, I would love to get like an original multi-track of this. But anyway, so like any good mix, you should start with your drums. And this is where I wanted to start with the sound design. So if I'm just listening back to the drum track by itself again. The first two things I'm noticing is, like many of the mixes from this time, there's not a lot of oomph coming out of the kick. There's a little bit of a pillow, like a thoof, thoof, but there's not like a punch. There's not a boom. And I would say most of the other drums, while they have some transient impact, it's not very strong. And I think a huge part of that, especially on the toms, is the fact that it sounds to me like they only tracked with 4 mics, 2 overheads, 1 snare, 1 kick. So the first thing I did was do a little bit of transient shaping, get it boost it a little bit, do a little bit of low end enhancement. This is before, then after. Just gives it a little oof, not too much. Then I did some parallel compression. Nothing too crazy. Put the mix right at 50%, so we're half and half. Before, then after. Before, then after. Now, is this making it sound more unnatural? Yes, I would agree. It actually is making it sound more unnatural. I think it actually adds to the energy of the song, in my opinion, even though it sounds a little more unnatural. I kind of dig it. But then next I added some tape saturation just to give it a little bit of an extra punch, but not too much punch because there's already plenty of punch coming through with my transients. Then I did a high pass around 37 hertz, and this was at the suggestion of my friend Eric. I went back and I dipped out around 150 because let's listen to this before and after. This is before and then after. Notice how that kick tightens up. Any of the sub information that is being boosted by any of the enhancement stuff I'm doing or the tape is being cut out because we don't want that. It's just eating up headroom. And remember that like lack of definition thing I was talking about where it's just kind of a woof on the kick drum? Ducking out at 150 kind of takes some of that trash away, for lack of a better term. Then I just did about a 1 dB boost at about 82, give or take. Then I did R bass at 80 hertz. R bass is a secret weapon. It's actually dirt cheap too. Definitely would recommend getting it. Let's just take a listen to before and after on R bass, honestly. This is before. Then after. Before. After. Just a little more punch in there, a little bit more definition. Then I added a clipper. Next I added a stereo imager and brought it in more narrow because it's the whole way out at 100 and the guitars are in from there. And I was like, nah, we're gonna go new school on this one, where the overheads in the kit are more narrow in the picture than the guitars. It gives a picture of largeness when you do it this way. So this is before. Then after. Before. After. That's how I built the drums. Next, you bring in your bass. So I brought in my bass boy. Let's listen to just the bass. Nothing on it. Again, you can hear the guitars still captured in that capture, which is how you know this was not like, oh, it's bleed from the guitars while they were recording. No, that's just horrific stem splitting. This is my bass before. Then bass after. Obnoxious. A big difference. And I mean, I think you can argue that, is it too much? By itself, I could see people being like, ugh, I don't know. But in the mix, it kind of works. Let's bring my drums in for reference. That feels good. Bypassed. See, I exaggerated the drum so much that the bass also needs to be exaggerated in order to compete with it as far as loudness and just trying to take up space, you know what I mean? So this is without. This is with. I thought it was good. So again, just listening to the bass by itself. The first thing I'm noticing is there's just not a lot of low end at all. And I imagine they wanted most of that covered by the kick drum, but the kick drum's low end is kind of flubby and not amazing, in my opinion. It's not the flubbiest, but it's just not really well defined. So I made the bold choice of bringing in parallax and kind of redefining the distortion characteristics and also the low end exaggeration. In production circles, this is 99% of the time a no-no. If you already have a saturated or amplified instrument signal, adding another layer of saturation, distortion, amplification can be really bad. But I said, screw it. Let's take a shot. This is before and after. It's got more balls. And it's also got more growl on that top end, especially on the attack. So then next I brought in our bass, but instead of being at 80 hertz where the kick drum was, I put it at 150 hertz, a good place for a bass guitar to sit. It also happens to be the place where we cut the kick drum. So again, this is before and after. Before and after. I think a better way of demonstrating why I chose to do it that way would be to also solo up the drums at the same time. So let's bring the drums back in really quick. It's before, then after. It gives it a happy place to live without making the drums feel like they're being drowned out. Then next I did some multi-band compression, but really just one band in order to make sure that the low end was tamed. Did a mild amount of limiting, did some tape saturation at a high speed. Then, and this is quite important, I did a high pass at 54 hertz and then a duck at 87. You've seen me do this on other videos. I did my little cheat where in order to get the bass out of the way of where the frequency of transient is on the kick drum, I do soothe just there. Just keeps it out of the way. Excellent cheat code for anyone who wants to use that. Then I added a little bit of panache with my Pool Tech emulation here all together. I like that. I'm happy with that. Then next, guitars. This was a whole deal. So this is guitars before, and then after. I can already hear compression on the guitars on the main track. So nothing too crazy on the guitars. At this point, it's probably old hat. I use the Cornef Amplified Instrument Processor. Love this guy. Before doing anything else, I got this absolute garbage frequency out of here. Here, I'm going to turn that off for a second. Just listen to this. You might not have noticed it. It actually helps a lot. Let me show you the frequency that I'm murdering here. Watch your ears, everybody. That thing is so awful. Again, this is before, after. Trust me, you'll thank me. Taking that information out of there actually gives us the ability to get these guitars louder. Next thing I did was dip at 2.5K. These guitars sounded very bright and almost brittle and thin in certain ways. And on one hand, that keeps them very separated from all the other instruments. But on the other hand, it's also just very thin and brittle. And I like something with a little bit more meat. And I also added just a smidge at 140. Next, I added Soothe, just a little guy. It is ducking no more than a decibel and a half. Then a little secret weapon. I used the SPL Vitalizer, which is a beautiful emulation. This is before and after. Before After. It gets you more of that presence back that you felt like, oh, you took all the presents away. Yeah, I took all the garbage presents away. I added this beautiful sheen on everything. Then I added the shed spread, and I tried to spread them so that they weren't going further than where a natural 100-100 would be on panning. And then just a little bit of a middle EQ high pass to get rid of anything that could possibly be coming from the cabinet there, to get it out of the way of the kick drum and the bass guitar. So let's listen back to drums and bass. You can still hear bits of the guitars in there. It pisses me off so much. Then guitars. That's happy. That kick drum is real happy, dude. I'm gonna rewind it a bit here. These guys are happy. This is the original instrumental. It's a good balance. It's raw. It's got a vibe. It works. Then you try to modernize it a little bit, you know, give it a little bit of I don't know, I like it. Then finally we have the vocals.
You'll take my life, but I'll take yours too. You fire musket, but I'll run you through. So when you're waiting for the next attack.
I like the verb. The compression that's already on there is great. The EQ that's on there is great. Honestly, that all sounds really good. I wouldn't really want to touch much. I did a handful of small things just to try and get a little bit more information out of the vocals so I could get them a little bit more forward. And I added a kiss of air on that top, but I really didn't touch these much at all. So if we go ahead and take a look here, this is the Brainworks refinement plugin. This thing is such a cheat code. It is very good for just having an all-in-one quick solution to vocals. I don't use it all the time, but in this case, I felt like, yeah, let's just toss this guy on here and not think about it.
You'll take my life, but I'll take yours too. You fire musket, but I'll run you through.
After.
So when you're waiting for the next attack, you better stand, there's no turning back. The bugle sounds, the charge begins. But on this battlefield, no one wins.
So you'll notice there's a little bit of mid-range information that's being taken out of there, and that's what this damping guy is doing. He kind of acts similarly to how Soothe acts. If we take a listen here with him on.
The smell of acrid smoke and horse's breath.
Solo filter is the stuff that's being taken out. It's getting rid of a bunch of type of stuff that lives where the guitars live, frankly. Then I added 1 decibel of presence, and then I added just a hair of saturation. Then I added my stereo imager in order to bring it closer to the center because it was very wide. And I'm just like, F it, bring it closer in. And that's it. That's all I did. Nothing too crazy. Most of the work done on the drums and the bass, because those are the guys that I would say felt the absolute least modern. The guitars still don't really feel super modern, in my opinion. But there's not really a whole lot I can do when the low end information isn't there. It's not captured. So again, this is the original mix. It's good. The classic we know and love. And then my guy. I don't know. I thought I did a good job. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Huge thanks again to Sweetwater, because I could not have gotten this good of a mix without these focals. They really helped me get that low end dialed in and actually learning how to hear it in this darn room. And this fader port made my workflow so much easier. Holy goodness gracious. And click here for another remix video.